Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to the first episode in what will be a 5-part series. I've been wanting to do something like this for quite a long time. I oftentimes think about, some of these great bands in music and rock history that have like an incredible streak of great albums, like classic albums. And I started to think, well, there's a lot of bands that have 3, maybe 4, some even 5, but there are some, in my opinion anyway, where they had a 6-album run that is pretty damn spectacular. So what I've decided to do is I picked out, I think, a list of 25 of them where I think that 6-album run is pretty damn special. And we're going to do 5 separate episodes, 5 bands per episode, totaling up 25. This will be 1 episode a week, so we'll go for 5 weeks on this particular show. And I'm going to kind of show you all the 6 albums, right? And talk about them. We're going to talk about the sales figures, the songs, what makes them so special, so unique. And I've got 5 heavy hitters to kick us off here this week. So let's start out first with the band Rush. Now, in some instances, some of these bands, you could technically, for some folks, depending on what you like, you might start this run a little bit earlier or a little later, because some of these bands could go either way, right? There might be some albums that fall outside of the 6 that are pretty strong itself, but what I've tried to do is I've tried to pick the 6 consecutive studio albums. Well, I'm only doing studio albums here that I think are pretty special. Boom, 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 right? 6 in a row. So I'm going to start with Rush, and I think for me, even though their first 3 albums are really special, I love them a lot, for me, that magic sequence of 6 albums starts with 2112. Okay, so this, of course, the first really big album in the career of Rush. This was an album they released after their record label basically said, guys, this Caress of Steel album, I know you kind of like it, but man, we're just not feeling it. The general public isn't feeling it. You need a big one here, because otherwise all the momentum we've been building is going nowhere. We might have to drop you, right? So they come out with 2112, which I've said here before on the channel, to me, isn't all that much different in approach to Caress of Steel. You got some long epic tracks. It's pretty heavy, lots of weird sci-fi lyrics and whatnot. It's progressive, it's heavy, but the general public picked up on this in a big way. All right, so this went on to sell 3 times platinum. I'm going to give you some sales figures in mostly U.S., but you might get some Canada and U.K. and whatnot. So of course, this has the great 2112, Temples of Syrinx, that whole thing, Passes to Bangkok. Great album. 3 times platinum. Pretty huge for this band. They would follow that up with A Farewell to Kings, which is my number 2 in this 6-album run. Okay, this didn't quite sell as much. This went platinum here in the States. All right, but still considered like the pinnacle. Again, these are not mainstreamy type albums, right? This is pretty complicated stuff here, and but they caught the public's eye. Right, Farewell to Kings title track, Xanadu, Cinderella Man, Cygnus X1. I mean, great stuff on here. This is probably one of the 2 albums that are probably the apex of the band's heavy and highly progressive period, right? Arguably could call progressive metal, right? So platinum there. Hemispheres comes out. This is album number 3 in this 6-sequence run. This also goes platinum. Again, Cygnus X1 Book 2, right? So we're continuing on with the whole big epic Cygnus tale here. Circumstances, The Trees, of course, their classic instrumental La Villa Strangiato. For many people, the ultimate Rush album, right? For many. Okay, so as we're moving into the 80s now, right? Permanent Waves. Album number 4 in this sequence. This goes platinum as well, so it's 1 million+ album sales here in the States, in North America. Well, in the United States. Canada is looked at differently. This goes platinum. The beginning of a little bit more of a commercial sound, slightly, but still very challenging, still pretty heavy. Spirit of Radio, Free Will, Jacob's Ladder, Natural Science. The whole album is great, right? But a little bit less on the big, bombastic, long technical pieces, right? The band is trying to do something a little bit less demanding and challenging for themselves. The general public, though, is loving it. And speaking of loving it, so we now go to Moving Pictures. 1981. 5 times platinum here in the States. Radio tracks, Tom Sawyer, Red Barchetta, YYZ, Limelight. Then you got Camera Eye, Witch Hunted, Vital Signs on side B or side 2. For many people, the quintessential Rush album, and for many people, the album that got them into this band, right? The last album in this sequence, the 6th album, is Signals. Okay, this one goes platinum, 1 million plus. Okay, the beginning of a move to a different type of sound, because we've already seen it through this sequence of albums that the band has changed their sound a little bit from album to album. Here, definitely less guitar thunder, a little more use of keyboards and synthesizers, definitely a little bit more of a mainstream sound, but it's still Rush. It still really resonated with the audience. Subdivisions, right? Digital Man, Analog Kid, a lot of great songs on here. But the beginning of a different phase in the history of Rush's music as they move into the 80s to definitely more kind of higher technology type of sound, right? 80s type sound, lots of keyboards, lots of synths, less big guitar muscle, less riffy type music, but still pretty compelling, right? So that is the 6 album run that I have chosen. Again, you could arguably start earlier, right? You can maybe go to Carissa Steel and move up to Moving Pictures, or maybe you feel it's the first album through, Permanent Waves, right? Whatever your run is, this is my run. This is the, I think, classic run of Rush that's pretty much legendary. And again, the last 3, all right, so this is Permanent Waves, Moving Pictures, and Signals. Top 10 albums in the US, UK, and Canada. All top 10 albums. All right, so let's move on to the next band. Let's go to, ladies and gentlemen, the Rolling Stones. Okay, so the Rolling Stones, again, another one of those bands that have like eras, right? So they got their 60s, early mid 60s era. Brian Jones, the original band, the kind of like rhythm and blues era of the band. Then they went through their little psychedelic phase, and then as we're getting ready to finish out the 60s and go into the 70s, we got Brian Jones, his situation. He winds up dying. We got Mick Taylor coming into the band. Kind of starts a little bit before then, right? So on Beggar's Banquet, all right, this is album number 1 in this 6 album run. This goes platinum here in the States. All right. All these albums I'm going to mention here are top 5 in the US and the UK. Most of them number 1. They reached number 1 on the charts. All right, so Beggar's Banquet, of course. Sympathy for the Devil. I mean, the legendary stuff on these albums, right? Jigsaw Puzzle, Street Fighting Man, Stray Cat Blues, Salt of the Earth, right? Classic album. The last album, really, with Brian Jones in somewhat capacity, right? Next up, we've got Let It Bleed. All right. Here we got Mick Taylor in the band. This goes 2 times platinum. Again, top 10 album, probably number 1 or 2 in most major markets. Let It Bleed, Midnight Rambler, Gimme Shelter, legendary track. Can't Always Get What You Want. Monkey Man, I'm a monkey, right? Classic album. Number 2. Number 3, Sticky Fingers. 3 times platinum. So we're continuing to increase here. All right. Huge album, very influential album. Who didn't have this album back in the 70s, right? Brown Sugar, Sway, Wild Horses, Can't You Hear Me Knocking, Bitch, Sister Morphine, Dead Flowers. Legendary stuff here. To me, the Mick Taylor period is unmatched in the history of the Rolling Stones. Plenty of good albums before it, plenty of good albums after it. These are legendary in my opinion. Exile on Main Street, okay, the follow-up. Double album. This one just goes platinum. But man, the mystique about this album, right? This even if this only went gold and sold 500,000 copies, this is the whole story behind the making of this album is so absolutely rock and roll history, right? Recording this album in this house in France, right? People coming and going, the drugs are flowing. Keith Richards kind of really manning the helm at this point in time. And you get a double album's worth. Really different musically, right? Some typical Stone stuff, but there's a lot of the kind of like country rock stuff that was big on the West Coast here in the States. Rocks Off, Rip This Joint, Tumbling Dice, Sweet Virginia, Happy. Just so many great songs on here. One of the great kind of backyard barbecue party albums, in my opinion. It's like you put on when the weather's nice, sun's out, you got people over out by the pool, got the barbecue going, got the beers flowing. Exile on Main Street is a perfect album for that situation. Awesome stuff. All right, so they continue on. Goat's Head Soup, 3 times platinum. Okay, second to last album with Mick Taylor. Maybe not critically the darling that the 4 that precede it are, but man, you got Dancing with Mr. D, 100 Years Ago, Heartbreaker, do. Angie's on here, right? Winter, Can You Hear the Music, Star. Love this album. I think this is one of the most underrated Stones album from this time period. Love Goat's Head Soup. 3 times platinum. And the number 6 in this sequence of classics. 6 in a row. It's only rock and roll, but I like it. This one goes platinum. All right. If You Can't Rock Me, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, title track. It's only rock and roll, but I like it. Tom Waits for No One, which has one of the greatest guitar solos of all time by Mick Taylor. All right. Dance Little Sister, Fingerprint File, If You Really Want to Be My Friend. Another really, really strong album. So again, to me, this is an immense 6-album run from the Stones. If I could only listen to 6 Rolling Stones albums for the rest of my life, and I was given these, that's all I would need. I like a lot of the other stuff, but to me, this is where it's at. All right, moving on. Let's go to the mighty Led Zeppelin, shall we? All right, so this arguably could be the greatest 6-album run in the history of rock music. Arguably. All, with the exception of this one, the debut, all were a number 1 or number 2 album here in the States, and probably in many other places in the world. This made it to number 10 here in the States. Every other album they ever released was a number 1 or a number 2 album. All right. I'm not even going to get into the individual sales of these, because all I will tell you is that these 6 albums, you add up, at least here anyway, in the States, 75 million plus in album sales. 75. Crazy. I mean, the amount of records that Led Zeppelin sold. Led Zeppelin 1, Led Zeppelin 2, Communication Breakdown, and Whole Lotta Love, Immigrant Song, Led Zeppelin 3, right? All these other killer tracks. Led Zeppelin 4, Untitled album, Stairway to Heaven, Black Dog, Houses of the Holy, But the Song Remains the Same, and all these other Rain Song, and all these other great songs. And then, of course, Physical Graffiti, the immense double album, which has so many great songs on it. Does it get any better than this? There's some of you out there that might be screaming, well, Presence has got to be on there. Let's take off the first album and go the second album through Presence. Hey, whatever. You could arguably say it's the greatest 8-album run in rock and roll history, right? But to me, these 6, this is absolutely legendary right here. Absolutely legendary right here. All right. Where do you think we're going to go next? Well, we're going to stay, with the exception, wow, so 3 out of my bands in this particular episode, 3 are British bands. 1 Canadian, there's an American band coming up in a minute, but this we got to stay in the UK for the mighty Black Sabbath. Now, this was probably the toughest one here, because originally this series was going to be a 5-album run, but because so many of these bands that I was considering doing had 6, or they had definitely 5, but then you can make a strong argument for 6. I decided to go with 6, mainly for Black Sabbath, and also for Led Zeppelin, because Led Zeppelin, I could not include their first album. I could not include Physical Graffiti. For Black Sabbath, I could not include Sabotage, and I could not include Black Sabbath. So I said, you know what, 6 it's going to be. And that may have shrunk the overall number of bands I was going to tackle in this series, but that's okay, because I think these are so notable that they have to be discussed. So again, Black Sabbath, their first album, this one goes platinum. Of course, you know what's on here, Black Sabbath, The Wizard, right? NIB, classic early Sabbath. Then, of course, second album, Paranoid, goes 4 times platinum. The legendary album. The album that got so many of us into heavy music, myself included. Title track, Iron Man, War Pigs, Fairies Wear Boots, Hand of Doom, Electric Funeral, Planet Caravan, Rat Salad. Immense album. 4 times platinum. Imagine being a fairly new band. Your first album goes platinum. Your second album goes 4 times platinum. Your third album goes double platinum. Master of Reality. All right. Sweet Leaf. After Forever. Into the Void. Children of the Grave. Dark, moody, gloomy, doomy, evil sounding album. Amazing. My personal favorite. Volume 4. This goes platinum. Wheels of Confusion. Changes. Tomorrow's Dream. Supernaut. Under the Sun. Snowblind. My favorite song from Black Sabbath ever. Awesome album. Number 5 in the sequence. Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Also goes platinum. Title track. A National Acrobat. Spiral Architect. Killing Yourself to Live. Who Are You? Sabracadabra. Looking for Today. Probably one of the Sabbath albums that I think back in the day when I first got into Sabbath in the late 70s, early 80s, that I really liked, but it wasn't among my top favorites. I think I'm liking this album more and more as I get older. This one keeps rising up the ranks. Terrific album. One of my favorite album covers from Sabbath. And then, of course, the album that you can't leave off, right, because that's why this has to be a sequence of 6, is Sabotage, which only goes gold here, but gold is really, 500,000 units. It's nothing to sneeze at. That's pretty damn good, especially in the 70s. I mean, it's got Hole in the Sky and Symptom of the Universe right there. Megalomania. Thrill of It All. Am I going insane? I mean, the whole thing is great. Moody, experimental, kind of progressive, right? All 6 of these albums were gold in the UK, and every one of them a top 10 hit there as well. Top 10 charting album. So these did very, very well in the UK. Even better here. I mean, it's just this is just an immense part of their catalog. And of course, then you got Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die, which for me I don't like nearly as much as these. And then of course comes the Dio stuff. And Born Again, and you could arguably say there are other really good quality 6 album runs in the history of Black Sabbath, but this you can't really beat this. You can't really beat this. This is legendary stuff. All right, let's move on to our final one. So I said we were going to go to America, right? So we are doing that. So this is a band who, for me anyway, there may be some of you watching that may say, well, only 3 or maybe 4 of those albums are really, really legendary. I'd argue that this is, a really substantial run, and a run that really cemented this band here anyway in the States as one of the biggest bands in the country for a number of years. So the band is Styx. We're going to start off this 6-album run with Equinox. All right, this is just prior to Tommy Shaw joining the band. And here they're really hitting their stride. They had a handful of albums that came out before this, which had plenty of good stuff on them. But really, this is the album where it all really clicked. I mean, this is just absolutely great. Light Up, Lorelei, Mother Dear, Born for Adventure, So Heavy, Sweet Madam Blue. Right? This is the album where it's heavy, it's proggy in spots. There's some pop on here. There's bombast. I mean, just awesome stuff. Dennis DeYoung and James Young basically running the show in the band at this point in time. They're doing all the lead vocals and whatnot, and just fantastic stuff. A great album. Album number 2 in this sequence, and this went gold here in the States. Crystal Ball comes next. We got Tommy Shaw taking place with Mr. Kerlowski. This album goes gold. Tommy Shaw, all of a sudden, great guitar player, looks good, great voice. He sings, he writes songs. Right, you got Mademoiselle on here, Jennifer, Crystal Ball, the title track, legendary track. This Old Man, Claire de Lune, Ballerina, awesome stuff. A little more proggy on this album. Maybe not quite as heavy as some of the stuff on Equinox. But, man, great songs. That's number 2. That went gold as well. Now, the big one, Grand Illusion. If it wasn't already starting to click on those other 2 albums, here it clicks completely. 3 times platinum here in the States. All right, you got Tommy, Dennis, and James all sharing lead vocals. Everybody's writing. All right, you got hook-laden hard rock on here. You got prog on here. You got pop on here. Pomp on here. All included. Title track, legendary. Fooling Yourselves, The Angry Young Man, Come Sail Away. Those are the 3 big hits on the album. But man, Superstars, great. Miss America, snarling track from James Young. Man in the Wilderness, gorgeous song. And the highly progressive and dramatic Castle Walls. So good. The keyboard sounds are amazing. The guitars are great. The vocalists are great. Amazing album. 3 times platinum. Also 3 times platinum, Pieces of 8. They follow that up with another equally as good album. Again, all the elements are there. Everybody's singing and writing. Okay, you got vocals from all 3 of those guys. Again, a mix of great heavy stuff, more proggy stuff, more poppy stuff. Great White Hope, I'm Okay, with those great church organ on there. The poppy Sing for a Day, Lords of the Ring, big, bombastic, proggy, heavy. Blue Collar Man, Long Nights, a great Tommy Shaw song, great radio track, heavy rocker. Queen of Spades, one of the heaviest songs they ever did. Renegade, another great Tommy Shaw radio track. The title track, Pieces of 8, is awesome. Fantastic album. How about, why don't we continue the run? 3 times platinum again, 3 million album sales for Cornerstone as we're getting ready to move into the 80s. All right. Here's where, again, the band is arguably now, they're a big band, arguably getting a little bit more commercial sounding, but still great material on here. People were buying this in droves. Concert tickets were selling left and right. Lights is a great song. Why Me? Babe, the huge hit on here. Very unlike anything they ever did before. This is a Dennis DeYoung ballad. Huge, enormous hit. Never Say Never, Boat on the River, great Tommy Shaw track, wonderful mandolin, just a really good song, great melodies. You got Borrowed Time, First Time, Eddie, the heavy Eddie, and the heavy Love in the Midnight. This is the first one I ever bought. I heard these 2 first, but I actually bought this and then went and bought those immediately thereafter. Yeah, great album. And then the number 6, the last in the sequence, is Paradise Theater. Also 3 times platinum. All right, so you have 4 albums in a row selling 3 million copies. That's really, really great. All right, here is, to me, at the time, their last truly strong album for a while. Okay. They kind of had a little misfire after this album with Kilroy Was Here. That in no way, shape, or form would I consider a classic album. It's got its moments, right? But not a classic. This is still a classic, right? Rockin' the Paradise, Too Much Time on My Hands. Nothing Ever Goes as Planned. You got the kind of the hit, The Best of Times, right? Lonely People, The Snarling Snowblind. Halfpenny, Two Penny, another great hard rocker. James Young's hands are always on a couple tracks in here. State Street Sadie, Lonely People, concept album about the great Paradise Theater, right? Gotta love it. So to me, this is another excellent, excellent run of 6 albums. Not a clunker in this batch, all right? So there you have it. 5 bands, 5 runs of 6 albums that are absolutely incredible. 6 classic albums. Not every band can do that. I went and looked long and hard through all the bands in my collection. Like I said, you can get 25 of them. And there were many that had 4 dynamite ones. Then number 5, not so good. There were some that had 5, but trying to find the 6, not quite. There were some that had like maybe a live album or 2 in there, but some of the studio ones were not quite so good. I wanted to just be studio albums because, live albums, most of the live albums around this time, back in the day, were pretty immense. And some bands just didn't do 6 albums, right? They had a great 3 or 4 album run, and that was it from them. Didn't want to count those as well. So these are bands who have been around for a while, where 6 albums in a row are considered or next to near classics. Great 6 album runs. Pretty special. So I think it'll be really fun to talk about these. So there you have your first 5. Styx, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, and Rush. Right? So 5 tremendous bands. There's more coming. All right? So stay tuned next week for the next 5. I'm looking at my next 5 on my list. Yeah, pretty great. So yeah, we're going to be doing classic rock, pop, rock, metal, prog. I got a mix of all sorts of bands on here, so this should be loads of fun. So thanks for watching, and visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together, all the damn time. So I guess for you guys to play along, start thinking about bands that you know of, that you like, that have 6 absolute classic albums in a row, and start putting them in the comments below. I'm doing 5 each week. You pick 5, and the next week we'll do the same thing. And this should be kind of fun. So stay tuned next week for another episode of this. And until then, visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. All together. All the damn time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. And also down below, you got the links to our Ko-Fi page, as well as our merch page, where we have all sorts of cool Sea of Tranquility stuff for sale. So thanks for watching, everybody. I am Pete Pardo. See you real soon here. Take care. Bye-bye.